Hey, what is up guys? It's Lewpac, back with another Albion Online video for you, and today I've got a really cool video that I'm sure a lot of you will enjoy. It's something that has been featured on the live stream lately, and people have been asking me to make a video on it, make a guide on it, because they've been super impressed and super interested. Obviously, in Albion Online, fame farming is a big part of everyday life. You've got to get your fame farming, you've got to get your specs up for ZVZ, for GVG, whatever. But that is, that is our XP system. So everyone's always about the fame farming, and they're always comparing what numbers can you get. Oh, I can get 1 million an hour solo dungeoning. Well, this group can do 1.2, so on and so forth. And I actually think I have found, with the guys that introduced me to it, one of the best potential fame farms in Albion. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not for the faint of heart, but I do believe a fully optimized and Gucci geared group is going to be able to break 3 million fame an hour with this method. My group, half-arsing it with rubbish gear, did something like 1.4, 1.5. We went back with a proper group and were able to do 2.2 with decent gear and a bit more experience. And once everybody's got the pulling systems down, everybody's got optimal gear and crazy good IP, this is just going to be absolutely insane. You're going to fly through this. There's a load of benefits to this method as well. The Avalonian 5-man, it's super safe if you do it correctly. You don't have to switch between dungeons. All of the mobs are in one location, and it's crazy good. So firstly, let me break down the basics for you. What you will need to do is find an Avalonian dungeon. Obviously, the higher tier, the better. They only spawn in tier 6, 7, and 8 zones. And I would recommend actually using a map because you get slightly better XP in exchange for slightly tougher mobs. But because we're going to be soloing the mobs one by one with a 5-man group, it doesn't really matter how high you go, because once you know the mechanics of each mob, the only really scary mob in there, in my opinion, is the wizards with their crazy AoE. The group composition we've been using, you can honestly either use, we were using 1 DPS Great Arcane with a Scholar Robe, 2 Bolt Casters, a Tank, and a Healer. You could use 3 Bolt Casters, you could use 2 Bolt Casters and a Bow, but the main thing is lots of Bolt Casters. Bolt Casters are super good for the pulling, and they're super good for doing damage to a single target. So I really like the Bolt Casters, but Bows are also an option. The Tank generally runs the Incubus Mace build, although the Hammer is kind of useful for the wizards and things that do big abilities. You might want to control them. And like I said, the healer is generally just like a normal spammer jammer healer that you might see in GVG, because he can keep the tank alive through anything. And of course, drop the Celestial Sphere if your guys take too much damage. Now, first thing you're going to do once you get into your dungeon, like I said, I recommend using a map to spawn your own dungeon. That way you know it's completely yours. You know that nobody else will know the location preemptively, because it will only spawn once you arrive, and you'll get slightly more fame because it's a map dungeon. It's in the black zone, but it is going to be safe. Once you've found your dungeon and entered, I recommend you guys put on skip sets. If you want to learn more about skip sets, check out my Avalonian skip guide that I did recently. And you're going to want to skip, ideally, to the first gate, destroy the gate, and then start fame farming from there. The reason for this is you're a 5-man group. If you get dove, you're in big trouble. By skipping to the first gate, you put all of those mobs between potential divers and you. You then clear the gate, which means if by some miracle divers got through all of the mobs, or another group was deciding to clear the dungeon, got to the gate, you'll then be notified that someone breaks the gate. So it's really hard to get dove, because you'll know somebody is coming, and it's very likely that someone will check the dungeon, see the first load of mobs, and say, nope, no one's in here, we're not diving this, there's no scout, etc. We've been doing this in like 8.2 masterpiece gear, like crazy Gucci gear. I mean, we're lucky because the zones where the Avalonians are for us, we spawn the Avalonians, and they're usually within bubble distance of a hideout or a territory. But nobody really dives us, because they would have to clear a bunch of mobs or skip a bunch of mobs, then break down a gate and then search for us. And it just doesn't really seem worth it for divers. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend, is get in the habit of clearing after the first gate. You could clear straight away if you're feeling brave, but I recommend putting at least a few mobs between you and any potential divers. You can obviously come back and clear the start mobs at the end if you just want that bit of extra fame, but that's completely up to the group. So the next thing you're going to need to do is learn the pulling method. Now we're using a bit of a trick with the interaction between stealth and abilities in the air. So you'll notice I'm doing it with the bolt casters and I'm using the noise eraser skill. With practice you can actually do it with other abilities like explosive bolt, sundershot, stuff like that, but noise eraser is quite slow traveling and quite long distance, so I find it a good ability to learn on. Now the trick is this: you need to fire a projectile like noise eraser. You then need to activate a stealth and come out of the stealth before the projectile hits. So you need to go in and out of stealth in the time that the projectile is in the air before it hits the target. The best item for this I've found is mercenary shoes, because you quickly pop them and then just instantly move and it cancels them. Some people use spectre shoes, but that does require you casting it twice, toggle it on, toggle it off. There's a few other things people have tried, but mercenary shoes seem to be the best in my opinion. So you fire the noise eraser, quickly toggle the mercenary shoes on, then quickly move to deactivate them. The projectile will hit the target and the target will come towards you, but anything he's linked to will not. This is to do obviously with the interaction with stealth and projectiles that have already been fired. If you were to fire the noise eraser just at the target and do nothing, obviously all of the mobs would come and overwhelm you. Using this method, you're able to pull one mob at a time and just focus it down. Standard tank and spank for most of the mobs. Incubus mace shrinks him. Bolt casters sunder and just open up. And you want builds that reset your cooldowns, anything to up your damage. Bring plenty of poison potions, like a royal jacket potentially to reset cooldowns, or a royal robe to deploy a magic rune to boost your damage if you're using explosive bolt. I still haven't perfected the perfect 5-man build yet, and I'm sure some of you guys will have ideas on the optimal 5-man, but we've been clearing crazy numbers in these farms. And the great thing is because it's only 5 of you, you can clear the whole dungeon. One dungeon will generate so much fame. So you get the solo pull, you clear the mobs. The one thing you have to be careful for is the mobs that knock you about. Obviously, like the cartwheeling guys with the quarterstaffs, the big knockback effects. You don't want to get knocked into other mobs because that's going to wipe you and cause you problems. But once you start doing this more and more, you'll get used to the positioning and you'll get used to just taking down the mobs in order. The only thing we actually struggled with was wizards at tier 8.1 because they do obnoxious amounts of damage. But generally, if you hit them with a great arcane freeze, then immediately a noise eraser, you can pretty much bring them down while they're silenced, provided you can get the damage out. And if they get one cast off and you got blinks, it's not so bad. It's pretty quick once you get going. And once you're confident with this and you're happy with your location, then I recommend you bring out the Gucci gear, because this is where it starts to fly. I got something like 20 levels of artifact crossbow from sort of 65 to 85 without breaking a sweat doing this. I was pumping my credits back into it as well, of course, but it is crazy fast even for leveling artifacts. And once you max the build, you're going to be rolling in credits. One thing you won't be rolling in is silver, because you're going to get credits so fast it's going to drain your bank account. But you're also getting the loot from these mobs, which doesn't seem amazing when you're doing a 20-man Ava, but when you're doing 20 people's loot divided by 5, you actually get a decent amount of relics, shards, tomes, etc. And we have started doing some of the bosses. Some of the bosses can be done as a 5-man. And this is the next thing I want to talk about. Obviously, this video is a guide to just taking out the mobs for Fame Farm. But you have 2 options, right? 5-man groups can kill some of the bosses. It does take a long time, but some of them are just mechanical bosses. They're not gear checks. They're not group checks. You can just kill the bosses with patience and knowing the mechanics if you wish to. For example, if you saw a golden chest. But the other option is your group Fame Farms the dungeon, pretty much completely clears it, bar the first few mobs, which we said you leave as a buffer. And then you put a message in Guild or Alliance chat and say, hey, would anybody like to do all of the Avalonian bosses, get the Grail buff, and not have to clear any trash? And I guarantee you, you'll have a 20-man group filled very, very quickly with people that are up for that. I think this is a really cool way to do it as well, because obviously it's not what was intended, but it's kind of fun to feel like a little 5-man power group going through an Avalonian raid and just farming hard. And I really love this as a chill activity. It's a great way to fame. Artifact crossbows is something I would like to max anyway, so I'm more than happy to do the boltcasters, and it gives a good use for my 8.2 excellent boltcasters. I haven't brought my 8.3 masterpiece yet, which I did craft. I may bring them out in the future for a bit of this if I'm feeling super, super risky, but I probably won't do it live on stream for obvious reasons. So there you go, boys. Get your 5-man comps, find an Avalonian dungeon, learn the pulling trick, and you'll be fame farming like a god in no time. You will be rolling in fame, rolling in credits, and you'll get a good amount of loot. This is super insane. I really, really hope they don't nerf this, because the fame in the Avalonian dungeons is really nice. And I think this is a good risk versus reward activity. It's not easy to do. I'm not going to say this is just super easy. Everyone's going to be doing it day one. It will take you a while to get the knack of pulling. It will take you a while to learn to beat each mob individually. And you're going to wipe a lot to multiple pulls by accident, to getting knocked into mobs and stuff like that. The mechanic itself for solo pulling mobs is potentially a bit iffy. Maybe they think, oh, this isn't quite right, you know, being able to stealth. But this is like a core interaction with the mechanics of stealth and the mechanics of projectiles that are in the air. So it would probably require a big rework to cancel. But I really actually hope they don't change it, because honestly, some of the pulls, some of the packs in high-level Avalonians, 8.1, 8.2 and onwards, are so obnoxiously hard that solo pulling is the only answer, even for a 20-man group, to clear some of these packs. Like, I'll probably make a separate video about the things I'd like to be fixed with the Avalonian dungeons, because, you know, I find some of the mobs really obnoxious. I think the wizards are a bit stupid with their instant damage, unavoidable ticks. Like, a 3-pack of wizards will decimate any raid unless they're running 4 great arcanes that play absolutely perfectly. And some of it is like anti-fun. The raid itself is pretty good on the whole, but I definitely think there's a few things to be changed. And I really don't hope they don't destroy the solo pull trick, because it is a skill that you have to learn, and it is very, very useful for progression through these raids. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you think of this video, and for sure, let me know what you think your perfect 5-man DPS comp is. Remember, you can bring more people. You could, in theory, bring less people, but 5 is optimal for me, because 5 is the peak group bonus to fame. Any more than that, and you do start to get the diminishing returns on a bigger group. But if you've got a couple of other friends that want to come, don't say, oh, this is only for 5 men. You could do it with 6, you could do it with 7, you could do it with 8, you could do it with 4. Long as you've got a tank, a healer, and a DPS, in theory, you could do it with 3. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people do. And I'd love to set a challenge soon for one of the bosses in the Avalonian raid and see who can do it with the least people. I'm pretty sure some of them can be done with 3. And that might be a challenge I'll be undertaking soon on stream. So let me know what your comps are. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I really hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I had a lot of fun making it. And I hope I didn't get it nerfed for everyone by making this video. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.